You know, it's not that God wants to move, it's God's already moving.
Yeah.
Are we going to participate in what He's already doing? All right, awesome. Father's Day. What a great day. What a great day to end and transition on. Right? It's just a good day. Who knows anything that happened in Father's Day during church history? The Brownsville Revival started on Father's Day, 1995. Wow. You were not alive in 1995. Please raise your hand. Not alive in 95. Crazy, crazy. How many of you were too young? Who's heard of the Brownsville Revival? Right, it's on our coast, right down the street, kind of, sort of, an hour and a half. But that was a revival that really just impacted the entire world, honestly, from 1995 until 2000. And if you can actually go online and watch the service where the Brownsville Revival started, and you would probably think to yourself, this is it? It didn't look that spectacular. It didn't look like a deluge from heaven, so to speak. Evangelist Steve Hill was preaching at Brownsville, and he was going through the crowd, and he was praying for people, and every now and then somebody would get touched. Every now and then somebody would get filled with the Spirit. And it didn't, on the outside, you wouldn't think, wow, something amazing is happening. A year later, in 1996, Bill Johnson goes to Bethel Redding to become the senior pastor, and he says, we're here to talk about revival, and we're not going to change the subject. And he never has changed the subject. And that morning, they did the same thing. They prayed for people. And you know how many people got touched that morning? One person. One person got touched. Now, if you're looking at what God isn't doing rather than what God is doing, you're probably like, dang it. Only one person got touched today. Gosh. Napoleon, give me some of your thoughts. But instead, him and Benny went home saying, yes, all we need is one. All we need is one flaming heart. And they celebrated. They said, that's the cloud the size of a man's hand. And I don't know if you've been down here for like the last week, but we've had clouds that are slightly bigger than the size of a man's hand. We've had some pretty big clouds lately and some pretty heavy rain. Are you picking up what heaven's putting down? Like, that's line one, right? So today's a milestone for our church, Awaken Family Church. Our last Sunday at Celebration Hall. Isn't that kind of cool? And for a lot of us in here, who had their life impacted and transformed in this space? Right? Sarah's like me. I saw Jesus in the hallway, right? She saw Aslan in the wardrobe. We call this the Narnia door because it's kind of like the closet that goes outside. And she had an encounter with Jesus there. We've seen angels. Who was here that night that the sound came in during prayer? We're praying, and we thought a jet was flying overhead, and then like the sound stayed, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. Heaven, what are you doing, Jesus? Like, wait, what? Sometimes when you find yourself in the midst of a supernatural encounter, you're kind of like, hey, wait, what's going on? Like, you're checking the natural environment that protects the integrity of the encounter. Right. But then you're like, okay, wow, that's God, right? Yeah. And this place, as we begin to drive by it when we change locations, it can be a memory stone. We can drive by and cherish what God did here. Yeah. Right? It can be a place, like, oh, wow, like, I can take someone I haven't even met yet, and I can drive down the road out here and say, God met me in that building.
Yeah, come on.
Right? And it could be a story and a testimony we can hand off to future generations and to our friends and family. But last time I checked, God doesn't hang out in buildings, He hangs out in people.
Yeah.
Alright? I'm about to get way ahead of my notes, but one of our prayers in this building for this season was this. We want to fill this place with His presence before we fill it with people. And that was good, and that was a season. But now that's transitioning. Because His presence is all about people. Yeah. So now we want to empower people with his presence. Right? He came to be present with us, so once again we can be present with him. There's no separation between you and the best dad in the whole world.
Yeah.
He's not way out there in outer space waiting for you to make the right decisions hard enough, long enough, and finally be good enough for him to say, okay, well, I guess you finally made it. I mean, wait, hold on. Let me just check all the goods and bads again to make sure you've been just a little bit more nice than naughty.
Yeah.
Right? We just need to remove that type of thinking out of our brains.
Yeah.
Because he looks at us and he sees Jesus, and Jesus has perfect check marks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Our history. So, who's been with us since the beginning? Here, since the beginning, right? Before we came here, we were nomads. We were wandering around the Choctaw Bay. We started in Niceville. That's a pretty nice place to start. It was a nice village.
Dad joke.
Yeah. You know, my son asked me to explain to him a solar eclipse. I said, no, son. Get it? Get it? Thank you, Caleb. That was Caleb. Caleb handed me that yesterday.
And the daughter said,
Daughter's like, okay. It's been a place to call home and grow family. So in this place, we've solidified as family. We went over our core values. We went over kingdom family. We went over identity. And, you know, it's not that God wants to move. It's God's already moving.
yeah.
Are we going to participate in what he's already doing?
That's right.
And as we begin to participate in what he's doing, it's very important that we know who he is, that he's a good father. We know how he sees us. Right? And if he sees us in this amazing, wonderful, beautiful, perfect way as he sees his son, then likewise we'll see everyone around us with the same lenses that he has. We'll love the same love that he has. Right? We'll begin to engage creation the same way Jesus engages creation. So I said all of that to say, as we transition, it's just momentum going forward. We've really solidified our core as Awaken family, and now we're really excited for what's to come. So today I want to talk to you about becoming an apostolic people.
Ooh, come on.
I had something completely different planned for this morning, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, is this the menu? It's like, hey, I can talk about this today or this today. Like
That's
virtual
special.
sermons, like everyone votes. We want to hear about this. No.
That's special.
I was ready to just kind of wing it and kind of go a different direction. I think that's coming soon. But at 6 o'clock, I get a download. And it's like, okay, great, yes, I get to get up and go spend time, you know. I just want to sleep 5 more minutes. But what compelled me to get up wasn't that I needed a message. What compelled me to get up is that as he began to speak to me, my heart began to burn. And I couldn't just lay there when the voice of God began to resound in my spirit. Right?
Yeah.
And so thankfully God created this thing called coffee to let my body catch up with what my spirit was experiencing.
Yeah.
So our main core value is kingdom family. Sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, doing life together in God's presence. You know, before Jesus looked at the disciples and said the word church or Allessia, he first asked them a question. He said, who do people say I am? And they kind of looked around. They were looking horizontal. Well, some say Elijah, some say Moses, some say John the Baptist. So they had a horizontal view, which isn't bad. He said, no, but who do you say I am? And then Peter answered, you're the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, the chosen one, the Son of the living God. Ah, Simon, man didn't reveal this to you. You went beyond the horizontal vision, you had a vertical vision. And when you have a vertical vision, you can understand the dynamic of the Trinitarian family, Father, Son, and Spirit. And when you understand the dynamic of the Trinitarian family, you see your inclusion in that family. When you see your inclusion in that family, then you can release and reproduce that family. And he said, on this revelation of this Trinitarian family, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. Now, I talked to you, I even put a picture up here a couple of months ago. When he told the disciples this, he was standing at Caesarea Philippi, right? Who remembers? Caesarea Philippi was a cliff with a cave in the center. And you know what that was known at the time of Jesus? It was the gate of Hades. It wasn't just a figurative speech. He was like, hey, looked at the disciples, hey, we're going on a field trip today. Hey, where are we going? Oh, the gates of hell. Oh, really? Jesus, are you sure? Oh, yeah, don't worry, I've got it. Not only do I have it, but when you realize who you are and who God says I am, you'll see who God says you are. And the things that come out of hell won't even affect you because you know your identity as a son and daughter of God.
Preach that.
And that which tries to destroy the earth, you'll find yourself reigning over. Right? That's why identity is so important, and that's why identity is such a battleground today.
Yeah, true.
If you have chaos in your mind, you don't know who you are. And when we don't know who we are, we don't complete things that originate in that kingdom family.
Right.
But when we know who we are, we complete that, and then that message, that family, that relationship broadcasts to everyone we come in contact with.
Amen.
You guys tracking? So church is a family who creates community, who transforms culture. Now this transforming culture part is what I want to focus on today.
Okay.
After they had revelation of kingdom family, he used this thing called Allessia, which revealed to them what their role was as the church. The church were a called out group of people who would sit in the city gates and govern what went in and out of the city. So once they had their identity as sons and daughters, he revealed the church, his body in the earth, and then he called them apostles. Who knows what the word apostle means? It means sent one. So you have called out ones and sent ones. Right? Now apostles in the day of Jesus were these Roman generals. And what they would do is they would go into a territory that was conquered by Rome, and they would transform the indigenous culture from that of the country into Roman culture. So they were able to conquer people not through warfare, but through culture change. Now you see the enemy attempting that today. Right? The enemy always counterfeits with the kingdom. It's actually what we're seeing today is a counterfeit deconstruction of family and trying to call it something it's not. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. In the beginning, you see the circle of family. The enemy, Papa Leif says that Lucifer was the first orphan. And when you don't know who you are, you don't know who God is, you think God's this big angry guy who's going to come get you. And so you start hiding away. But then God is the one who always comes and says, where are you? I'll provide the sacrifice so you can once again see your true identity.
Come on. So good.
I've jumped ahead in my notes. So becoming apostolic, first for sons and daughters. You know, when I was at Brownsville, I was in ministry school there, and then we ended up graduating from a school called Fire School of Ministry, and there were hot buzzwords in the church during those days. Words like community, apostolic. Like those were the fresh words that were happening. And it's really sensitive, I'm like breathing into the mic. And those were buzzwords because God was once again talking to the church saying, hey, as my spirit comes and moves, remember, it's not about these liturgical things. It's about you getting to know one another. It's about building relationships. It's about doing life together.
Yeah.
as we gather on Sundays, which will be Saturdays soon, as we gather together in corporate meetings like this, it's a place for all of us to connect and corporately worship God. But this shouldn't be the only time that we see each other. Right? It doesn't mean every single week we're going to every single person's house, right? We'd just be on a conga train passing everybody, which would kind of be cool if we were more in the urban area. It just means you're being intentional from week to week, from day to day, to connect, to make the phone call, to go to someone's house, to make them a meal, right? Intentional relationships. All right, here's where I'm going.
All right.
Boom.
Boom.
Pillars of an Apostolic Church. My school of ministry students will know that I call this the pillars of Ecclesia. Yeah. Let's go to Acts 2.
Okay. Acts. Woo.
Acts 2 is a pretty important chapter in the Bible. A lot of things happen in that chapter, like this whole deluge and transformation of the entire earth and everything. Like this chapter is like the heavy artillery. In the beginning of the chapter, they're doing what we're doing now. They're just worshiping together in one place. And all of a sudden they hear a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and it begins to fill the whole house where they were sitting. Suddenly what appears? Tongues of fire, right? The imagery in the Greek is interesting because we think, oh, there'll be tongues of fire, The image in the Greek is more like pillars of fire. One pillar comes down into the room, like Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty. And then it separates and each person gets their own pillar of fire. Right?
I love it.
So it's a much more grandiose image than we kind of get. When things get translated from the original language, you try to make it as understandable as possible into the language it's being translated into. So sometimes you lose some of the depth and the awareness, and the whole world is tied up into how they were experiencing it. It's called hermeneutics. You're welcome. School of Ministry starts in September. And so the Spirit comes, and then everyone's like, whoa, what's going on? Everyone's like, they're drunk, they're crazy. And Peter's like, nah, bros. This is actually scriptural. Most of the time in the New Testament, when you have someone actually preach a sermon, they're usually just trying to explain whatever in the world the Spirit had just done. Right? I mean, sometimes we have it backwards. Like, we start preaching and God moves. They're just like worshiping Jesus, and glory breaks out. People get healed, they get raised from the dead, pillars of fire show up, and then people are like, hey, excuse me, what's happening here? Oh, let me tell you about somebody named Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And so Peter says, hey, this is that spoken by the prophet Joel. Hey, you guys have heard about the Bible, right? Who's heard about the Bible? Right? We've heard about it, but we're the ones who can say, this is that. It's not something we just recite and memorize. That's valuable and important. This is something we experience and demonstrate. So Peter was able to say, this is that spoken by the prophet Joel. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will have visions, and your old men will dream dreams. I think I said that backwards. But all of this promise of this experienced reality that everyone has access to the secret place, that which you've heard was coming is now here and is now at hand. You're all welcome. What must we do to experience this? Change the way that you think. The kingdom is no longer coming, the kingdom is here. Right? And so you see this amazing revival, this amazing breakout, and that catches us up to 242. They were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching, and to fellowship, and to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many wonders and signs were taking place through the apostles. And all the believers were together and had all things in common. And they would sell their property and possessions and share them with all to the extent that anyone had need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. What was happening? I'm not knocking standing and preaching on the street corner. I think that type of evangelism has its place. But you don't see that listed in what was happening here. What was happening here is that they would go to each other's houses and they would break bread, and then people would get healed, and then their neighbors and their friends would hear about it. So day by day, one or two more coming in. Day by day, this family gets touched. This family gets touched. This family gets touched. There's a story that John G. Lake tells when he was in South Africa about this guy named Van Buren. Van Buren gets radically filled with the Spirit just reading like a one-page testimony of God touching someone else. Gets radically filled with the Spirit, and he's like, you know what? I think I need to go to Parliament. You know? And so he gets radically filled with the Spirit. He goes to Parliament, walks into the room, and the guy who sees him walks into the room, hides behind the desk. Because the guy walked in with so much presence and so much glory. So finally he comes out and says, what must I do? Right? This guy, from reading a one-page testimony, gets 19 families around him saved. Not just 19 family members, but each household of those family members, all of them get saved. It can happen in a moment. It can happen in a flash. Right? Things that you've been praying for years. Jesus is like, okay, that's in your account. Okay, that's in your account. Okay, that's in your account. He hasn't forgotten. Every single prayer, every time you had things you didn't even remember to pray, he's kept those as well. And in a flash and in a moment, he can say, here's the return on your investment. We're not working for it. He's just lining us up so that at the best possible time, our hearts are open the widest to be able to receive everything that he has for us. All right, so the apostles' teaching, number one. So we talked about what the apostles are. I'm going to give you some bullet points on these. They're grounded in Scripture. I've already said that. Not just reading or memorizing it, but demonstrating it. Apostolic ministry is always accompanied by signs, wonders, and miracles. Paul's talking in his epistles to a group of people. He said, the signs of a true apostle were performed among you in all signs, wonders, and miracles. If it's apostolic, it's sent of something. You're not just sent, you're sent of something. You carry something, right? So when you're sent, you're carrying the fullness of heaven and the fullness of the kingdom with you wherever you go. And if sickness gets in that zone of glory that you carry, it gets obliterated, right? It gets pushed back. The gates of hell cannot resist those who are sent of heaven. Those who know their identity. That was shot out.
I was like this.
Alright, so they were devoted to the apostles' teaching. They were devoted to that which was sent of heaven. That's where they lived their lives, right? In the overflow, the cascading overflow of what heaven was doing in the earth. Number two, fellowship. Everybody say, hey, this is crazy. I had no idea Susan was going to be here today.
This is crazy.
Yeah, so it's coming. I haven't said it yet. Fellowship. Everybody say koinonia. 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 2007 to 8 to 10, we were young adult pastors at the Father's House Church. And we had a young adult group called Koinonia. And we call our young adults coins, because that's the first part of the word. Right? And Susan's daughter, Allessia, was in our young adult group, Koinonia. You can't make this stuff up. I wasn't going to talk about this, and I get the download this morning. Like, oh, I'm going to talk about Koinonia at the Father's House. And then, boom, Susan's like, hey, I heard you in the Spirit, I'm coming, yo. Isn't that crazy? So koinonia is the Greek term for fellowship. Now, if you think about the English word fellowship, what does that sound like? Oh, it's real. Yeah, it sounds exactly like what it is. Fellows on a ship, right? Now, here's the thing about fellows on the ship. Even when you disagree, you're still going to choose to stick together, or somebody's going to be walking the plank. I mean, the church has done that too much, right? This is not what we need to do. But the point is that when you're on a ship together, the goal isn't to walk away. That's not even an option. The only option is to work on your differences and find a solution.
Yeah.
That's what kingdom family should do. We shouldn't have, as Allessia said last week, we shouldn't have quit lines or I'm out of here lines. Now, it doesn't mean you go to Awaken Family Church the rest of your life. That means that you're always looking for a solution to every problem. You're not perpetuating something or saying, my feelings are hurt. You say, oh, my feelings are hurt. I need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? My friend Rob Radowski had this quote a couple of years ago that went viral. And I think I've said this recently, but here it comes again, right? Repetition. Religion says, I messed up, my dad's going to kill me. Relationship says, I messed up, I need to call my dad.
Come on.
Well, if we can have that kind of relationship with the Father, that's going to empower us to have that kind of relationship with people.
That's right.
Oh, I messed up, I need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk this out, let's work this out. Right? The church should be the most healed people in the world, but right now it's the most fractured.
Come on.
Right? It says in Revelation that salve of healing can go across our eyes, and then we can see each other as God intends us to see. So the New Testament church gathered to worship, but they also gathered around each other. Right? So there's always this vertical thing, this horizontal thing happening, and this vertical thing happening. Right? Is it any accident that Jesus died on the cross? He held the world, the horizontal plane, in his arms, right? So we can understand his revelation of the Father in the vertical plane. And our sweet spot's in that circle right in the center. And I think these four things are revealing what that sweet spot looks like, right? Apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking the bread, prayer. You guys catch that? Apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking the bread, prayer.
Good. Real good.
So times of connection when there's, I know I'm talking about revival, right? You guys ready? Times of a connection when it's not so spiritual are very important.
Yes. Yes.
You couldn't have told 27-year-old Pastor Dave that. He was like, revival every second, revival, revival, revival. But then I kept living, and oh wait, people are important. It was actually at the Father's house I had my baptism of love. So that was very significant. Because our pastor there, Greg, wasn't about being a pastor, he was about being a father. Right? The Father's house. Another thing, so we're doing life together, so we don't need to bypass the person in front of us for Jesus. Now that may sound blasphemous, but there's a part of Jesus in the person in front of us that's not in this. It's in the hub. It's in the heart connection. Right? Because each one of us in the room, you're part of his heart that he formed, that he breathed life into. It said, I'm going to set them in the perfect generation, not only for them to have the most impact, but I'm going to set them in this generation so they can be connected with the other ones I've designed for this generation. So they could all become family and do life together. Right, so when we're doing life together, it's a wonderful time. Like last night, we had fellowship. It was a wonderful time of connection.
So good.
Some of us may have been talking about God in the room, but just in being together in his presence did something for our souls and our spirits that was nourishing, something that we needed.
True.
And if you couldn't make it last night, that's okay. You'll be here next time.
Yes.
And if you made it last night and can't be here next time, that's okay. That's how we have each other's back. That's how we grow.
Amen.
The New Testament church had all things in common, not because they were weird. We think about that like, wow, that's the level of spiritual. Oh, I guess I need to go, sell my skateboards and Jesus, I'm making an illustration. Don't ask me to sell my skateboards. I guess I got to do this. I guess I got to do that. That's not where they were at. That wasn't their headspace. They would come together, and now that they're overflowing of care for each other, they would naturally just be solutions to one another.
Yeah.
They would just naturally meet one another's needs.
That's what solutions to one another.
Hey Frank, Sammy needs a sandwich. You got any of that deli meat? Yeah, I got some deli. Okay, can you bring that over? Okay, good. Oh, hey, I'm not using this old truck over here. Let me sell that, and then I can invest in this, right? It wasn't this pious thing where they tried to just become nothingness. If that were true, then they wouldn't have had the abundance that they had to provide for one another.
No, this is good.
That's the missing element, right? Somebody, even John G. Lake himself, in his first marriage, he would go buy groceries and give them away on the way home. And his family wouldn't be able to eat, and his wife died of malnutrition. Right? Have a heart for people, but if I have a heart for a person and I leave my heart towards them to help, then the Father can hear that heart and say, hey, I know your heart's to help, but I've got someone to partner with them. Here's 2 stories. Everybody say story? One time I was driving back from Brownsville to Atlanta, and I saw a truck on the side of the road. And I thought, man, that looks like Elijah. Maybe I should turn around and help him.
Elijah, your friend,
Oh yeah, sorry. Elijah, my friend, not Elijah the prophet. Sorry. My friend's name was Elijah. And I was like, Lord, if that was Elijah, just let the next road sign I see be on fire, orange, and glowing as a sign that I should turn around and help him. I passed the sign, it was still just green. It was pouring down rain, by the way, pouring. And I heard, instead of seeing a sign, I heard his voice go, what if that is Elijah and you find out when you get back and you didn't choose to help him? That's all they asked me. I said, all right. So it was 10 more miles until the next exit. Then I had to drive 20 miles back down and then go like 5 miles back up, and I found it, and it was him on the side of the road. And so we're changing tires, pouring down rain somewhere in LA, Lower Alabama. Right? You know, it was crazy. And I didn't have a cell phone at the time. I was supposed to go back to Allessia's house. We were dating at the time, and I was like 4 hours late. She's like, where are you? Another time, I'm just driving around the city, and I see some people on the side of the road, and I think, oh, I'll stop to help them. And the Lord goes, no, don't worry about it. I got it.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was my flesh. I was like, no, I'm not going to listen to that voice. I'm going to help them anyways. So I drive around the block and come back around, and there's like 2 or 3 cars there, and they've all stopped to help. So it's in the moment. It's listen to his guidance, listen to his still small voice. He might say, hey, stop for the one. Or he might say, just lean your heart towards him. I've got it covered.
Yeah.
But there's this synergy happening in the early church that we often miss. Somebody had some blessing going on in their life. And not just somebody, a whole bunch of them. The only time someone got in trouble with that is when they sold it for a lot more than they said they did. And that was, let's not try that, right? All right, moving on. So they provided for one another with their time, their talent, and their treasure. Sometimes the way we provide isn't monetarily. It's giving the person a ride.
Yeah.
It's making something special for them. It's helping them move the vein of my stuff. People always ask me to move like the day after bicep day, right? And so you're picking the couch up, and you're like, oh, dang it, Jesus, every time it's like I gotta pick up the couch the day after I did biceps. It's like, didn't I tell you to have a rest day yesterday? Yeah, Lord, but I gotta get swole, you know? It's like, well, I told you. They provided, all right, friendship. Part of the fellowship is friendship. We need friends.
Yes.
We all need friends. We're not created to be solo. You know. And doing life together adds strength and value. I said this a few weeks ago as well, but if you look at the savannah, the lions will run at the herd, cause it to divide. And then the one that gets isolated and left behind is the one that the others pick off. And don't say, well, I mean, it's easy to get those places, well, I'm all alone, no one loves me. No one will reach out to me, no one will call me. Well, then what should you do in that moment?
I'll take up the phone.
You reach out. What if the person you decide to reach out to was feeling the exact same way, and then you were actually able to reach out to them? Then you're really going to come alive, because it's better to give than receive. Right? So if you're looking at things that you're missing in your life that haven't been given to you yet, find a place that you can give. That's how the kingdom works. And the more you give, it's like, oh, wait a minute, where does those blessings come up? Oh, I gotta start doing it here. I gotta give it away here. Oh, this is great. Woo, woo. Alexander the Great went to a city they conquered one time, and he saw a beggar on the side of the road. And he reaches into his satchel. Now, that's a man's word, right? Satchel. You hear the word satchel, you're just like, yes. And it's got a few more chest hairs. Satchel. Okay, it works for me, right? So Alexander the Great reaches into his satchel. And he throws 3 or 4 gold coins out to the beggar. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. And one of his generals goes, well, why did you do that? A few silver coins would have been enough. He goes, I know. It would have been enough for him. But it wouldn't have been enough to match the giving of a king. He didn't give based on the need that he saw. He gave based on the treasury of his heart. And he refused to give less than that, even though he could have gotten away with it.
The worst offering basket.
Yeah. There's a blue box in the back if you're getting inspired. No.
Yeah, worth the basket.
But we know our identity. We know that when we give, like I said last week, nothing goes out of our account. Our account actually increases.
Come on.
Because we're giving from limitlessness. That doesn't mean we're not being wise with what we have. Right? You're still wise, right? The Bible talks all the time about those who manage their money in a wise way. It even talks about like the shrewd servant. Who remembers that one? Like he knew that his master was about to like get rid of him. And so he went around to provide for himself. He settled all the accounts at 10 to 50% less than what they were owed. And then the master looked at him and says, well, he actually commended his shrewdness. Right? So there's something about management. I'm not saying be shrewd. I don't know how that tied together. So let's keep going. And there's that verse where Jesus looked at him and says, I now call you friends. If Jesus needed friends, so do we. Well, Jesus wasn't in need of anything. I understand that. But Jesus wanted people that he could share his love with. So what if that becomes our perspective on making friends? Just finding people we can share our love with. Well, if we take the evangelism hat off and we just try to find people we can share our love with. Because the word evangelion is good news. So you're just being good to people anyways. Somewhere along the way it became a formula. Let's just trash the formula and start loving our city. How's that sound? I told you guys before, when I came down here, I had my words of knowledge on my belt here. You know, I had prophecy here, healing, and I'm ready. And the Lord goes, can you just be nice to my city? And I was like, oh. You know?
That's good.
And as soon as I was nice to someone, a prophetic word came. Wrapped in encouragement, gentleness, and kindness. All right, moving on. Next up. Breaking bread. Not breaking bad. No one's in here seeing that. It's breaking bread. Oh, you can't see it because my connection's breaking bad. Well, the next one's the breaking of bread. Pops up in a second, it does. So a lot of times when we hear about the breaking of bread, we stop with communion, right? We're just taking the Lord's Supper, but it's much more than that. Everybody, pinch your arm. Yeah, ouch, right? You feel that? Pinch it. Is this bad? Is this stuff called flesh, is it bad? Now, last time I checked, Jesus redeemed it. Last time I checked, that existence called Adam was hanging on a tree, and our flesh has been redeemed. So a lot of times we're walking around trying to beat ourselves with everything that we should be doing or should not be doing, and we're trying to whip ourselves with things that Jesus already decided to be whipped with.
Yeah, that's so good.
So anytime you find yourself thinking negatively about yourself or condemning yourself, don't partner with what the accuser says about you.
Yeah.
Partner with what the Redeemer says about you. Well, what does he say about me? Well, just read the Gospel of John and you'll find out what he says about you. Right? It's good news. And so it's understanding that if you have a beach day, that's okay.
Yeah.
right?
Hallelujah.
If I have a beach day, I stick my feet in the sand, I'm just enjoying it. Then I start thinking about the cosmos, and then like Jesus, I'm like glory zone. And then I'm in the glory zone, and then I just start thinking about, oh man, I just need a break. So there's an ebb and flow in our spiritual formation, in our spiritual life. Here we go. And when we're sharing meals, we're not just sharing meals, we're sharing life. And the reason that meals are so important and so powerful is because we're sharing with one another something that we need to survive. Right? Who's been on the mission field?
Here.
Here. Oh, here. So there's this thing, like when you go into an indigenous culture, they only have one thing to give you. And that's their food. That's the substance, right? Because every single day, you start that day with nothing. You go hunt and gather until you get something, and then you make the meal, right? And so if they were to offer you a meal and you were to deny it, they're not going to receive anything that you have to say.
Right.
So that's why you got to eat what's put before you. And I've eaten some interesting things, right? And you just close your eyes and chew and just, hey, salt, salt.
Just say Jesus.
Just say Jesus, yes. Bless that food. And you just, yep. And then one time we were in Africa and Allessia couldn't eat the whole meal. So they gave us big portions, so she slid it to me and I had to eat the thing. And there was grace, right? And, you know, the steak over in Africa is not like this thick, fatty steak. It's like, it's almost like beef jerky steak. It's like, as you're eating it. So it's like you gotta chop it up in real small pieces. It's fun though, like that's an adventure. But there's something about eating something that someone prepared for themselves for their own nutrition, but instead they offered it to you.
That's so sweet.
You guys see what I'm saying? I'm trying to paint a big picture of what it means to be an apostolic church, because I feel like our transition today is impactful and it's powerful, right? And when we get into our new location and our new building, we're going for revival and we're not going to stop.
Come on.
There's a verse in the Old Testament that says when an Israeli soldier, a Hebrew soldier, had to first tend to his, if he was newly married, he had to tend to his own household for a year before he went out to war. And I feel like everything we've been doing for the last year has been tending to our own household. We're building up identity. We're building up one another. We're building core values. We're becoming kingdom family. We're doing life together. And part of doing life together is getting offended at one another, but choosing to remain.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if you want to be in leadership, you will offend someone. And that's okay. That's the opportunity to grow and be stretched and to move through it and to choose to stick together in the bonds of brotherhood and sisterly love. All right, I'm going to hurry up. I know, I've been rambling. It's not just spiritual enjoyment, it's natural enjoyment. Someone gave me a gift card this morning to a movie, and I'm going to enjoy that. Whatever movie it is, it's going to be some natural R&R, some enjoyment, right? If you're overly spiritual and can't have a good time, you'll disconnect from those you're called to do life with. I know that because I was that. Likewise, if you're not feasting in heavenly places, you won't have any fresh bread. You won't have an answer to life's eternal questions that's burning in the heart of everyone you're doing life with. You see the ebb and flow. It's the horizontal connection and the vertical relationship. And right in the center is that sweet spot. That's the scope, that's the target through which you see everybody's heart. Last one, prayer. Fresh bread comes from time with Jesus. Prayer isn't begging for provision, it's realizing our identity. And you see that in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, otherworldly, your kingdom come, that limitless place that is full of provision, abundance, and life. Your kingdom come, your will be done. What is his will? That which is good, acceptable, and perfect. Not destructive and stealing and killing. What does that sound like? The enemy. That which is good, acceptable, and perfect. He came to restore and fill every deficit in everyone's life and place with his love. Everywhere we're missing part of ourselves, Jesus allowed part of himself to be ripped off to replace that part of ourselves that was missing. Right? Every place we felt dry, he poured out his blood and the water from his own body to fill those places and those spaces with his healing in his life.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
So it's not begging, it's realizing our identity and everything that he's already done for us. Right? It's standing in his overflow. Prayer is time with him. Number one is time with him individually. Jesus. Hey. Wow. Papa, there you are. I love you, Papa. I love you too, Dave. Oh, Papa. Oh, Dave. Oh, Papa. Dave. Oh, just say my name, Papa. Oh, just say my name, Dave. Oh. Ooh, Allessia, Papa's touching me. Alessia's like, oh, Papa's touching me too. And then we come together, and as a family, we engage in prayer. So individually, as families, and then as a family of families, we engage in prayer. You see how it spirals outwards and expands. The Lord said, my house will be a house of prayer. Right? People who know God, prayer is knowing God, reveal heaven on earth in covert and overt revival. It says in Acts 4:13, I'll just read it to you. Now they observed the confidence of Peter and John and understood that they were uneducated and untrained men. They were amazed and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. Oh, this is that. We recognize their identity now. They were with Jesus. We see who they are now, right? Hey, I've read about Jesus in the Bible and I see that your life demonstrates his. Oh, you must have been with Jesus. I recognize Jesus in you. In our part, we recognize Jesus in them. A lot of times religion says, well, hey, you can know Jesus, ... If you pray, if you do this, if you. Right? Well, if we just present Jesus as he is, and then they say, well, I have to. They'll say, I want to.
Yeah.
Let our church, our family's church, and your own individual reputation be one that you know Jesus. All right, what's next? All right, check this out. There's your 4 things as we transition. This is kind of, for me, solidifying our identity, who we are, what we're called to do. We're going to be an apostolic house full of his presence, right? That welcomes everyone. But in welcoming everyone, transformation 100% occurs.
Yes.
Right? We're in the transformation business.
Yes.
So as we move forward, our heart and our minds are going to be to say, hey, this beautiful thing that we've been developing at AFC, we really want to impact our community. We feel like that these Saturday nights are going to be revival nights. That's how we started, and that's where we're going. Now, revival for us is when we restore people to God's original plan, desire, and intention.
Right.
It's not just praying a prayer. That's the threshold of this entire beautiful existence that comes knowing him. Knowing what his heartbeat sounds like. Thinking the kinds of things in our minds that Jesus thinks in his mind. It says in 1 Corinthians that we have the mind of Christ. Right? A renewed mind. So here we go. If you don't know where it's at, here it is. Boom. It's disconnected again. Now, if you go to awakenfamilychurch.com, the new location is on there. Check it out. If you go down here, take a right, go down the Blue Mountain Highway and turn left. Don't go to Blue Mountain Beach. Turn left. There's a industrial park back there. We'll have our banners and signs up there. So we're not having church next week. In 2 weeks, we're going to have our first Saturday night service, 6 p.m. And then you'll get home whenever you choose to leave. I didn't say that to scare you, but we're going to go for God, right? Yes. We're going to make a place where people can come and burn.
Yes. Fire.
We're going to burn. That's who we are, right? And so that's our agenda. That's our goal. Prayer, presence, revival. We want to be a place where there's fresh bread. Who drove past Burger King? Burger King's marketing is for you to smell them and go, oh man, that burger. And then you get 2 or 3 bites into that burger and you go, oh man, my stomach.
Yeah, we don't want that.
We don't want that. We want to have fresh bread where they can smell the aroma. Oh wait, there's bread. There's fresh bread. And we're not talking about growing, we're talking about impact. Right?
Yeah.
We want to have fresh bread for the churches around the city. We want to see the churches around us thrive.
Yes.
Right? We want to be a house of bread where they can come and get encouraged and